Hi everyone, this is Emily with Moms with Cameras, and I am excited to do our first installment in a series that's going to be called How'd You Do That? I get asked all the time how I photograph different images, so I'm going to start sharing some of my favorites and talking to you about the thought process behind them, what I was doing, what kind of equipment I used, and how I shot it. So hopefully this will help, especially those of you who are just starting out and maybe are needing some help kind of thinking through your images and thinking how to light them and how to set them up. I'm hoping that this will be a great, easy to understand, plain English resource for you. So today we're going to talk about this image. This is one of my senior models for this year, and she is sweet and darling and gorgeous, and we just love working with her. And what had happened is we were photographing this at the crack of dawn. Like the light had literally just come up over the horizon when we started her session. And what had happened is we had previously photographed her and it started raining in the middle of her session. So we had to wrap up the last couple of images on a different day, early in the morning. And I love shooting at this time of day. The light is golden and gorgeous and it's beautifully directional and soft. And so it's just a great time of day to do images. I love creating images at this time. So we went out to her land. Her family has some land. And we were trooping around and I saw this spot and I saw the sun coming through the leaves and I thought this is where we need to create this image. So what I did is I took her over here because I could see the sunlight coming back from over here through the leaves. And I knew I wanted to create this room light on the edge of her hair and going down, you can see it on the edge of her shoulder. And what it does is it creates a wonderful separation between her and the background. This light coming from behind her mimics kind of like what you would do in a studio with a hair light. It is separating her from the background. And it creates this gorgeous soft glow that parents and our seniors love. They like seeing that kind of image from us. So what I did then is we needed to create a fill on her face. Had I just used, let's say that I set up the shot and I put her here and I used something like a programmed mode, like either program or aperture priority or something like that, more than likely her face would be way too dark. The camera would try to kind of make everything come into balance, and by default everything that is not super bright is going to go too dark. So what I needed to do was create a manual exposure, and what that was it was ISO 320, which is a little higher than I normally do. Outdoors, usually I'm trying for 100 or 200 at the most, but like I said, it was very, very early, and I didn't want to have to open up my aperture any further, and I didn't want to have to slow my shutter speed anymore, so bumping the ISO was the choice I made. So I set it at ISO 320. I was photographing at 4.5 for my aperture, so it's a nice kind of happy medium. It is not, today it's very popular to photograph completely wide open, like at 1.8 or 2.2 and 2.5 and that type of thing. And while I love that for our newborns inside, I photograph virtually nothing else like that. I have a very low tolerance for anything out of focus. And so I've come to learn that I am not the world's best. I know some people can, photograph a family of 4 at 2.8 and everybody's in focus. I am not that gal. So I photograph at 4.5. And that enables me to still have, some nice blur in the background, especially because I'm using a slightly longer lens. I'm using an 85mm Canon lens, and so I'm able to get a little bit of blur in the background, but I'm able to keep her and all components of her tack sharp, which is really important to me. And then I was photographing at 1/200th of a second. And I am using a 5D Mark II. That was the camera that I'm using that day. And I also am on a tripod, and I almost always photograph, again, barring babies in the studio, I almost always photograph on a tripod just because, again, I really do like things to be tack sharp, and the older I get, the less good I am at hand holding my camera steadily. So I use a tripod and it works out great. The lighting that we had to do for her, so I set up the shot and the light's coming through here. What I did is I metered, for her skin, and then the light that I brought in, I wanted to add coming from the front, coming from her. So I tell my assistant to pretend that the subject has a unicorn horn, and that's where the light should be coming from. So it's going to be from the middle of the forehead and up a bit. And so the light will kind of aim down into her eyes there. And so you can see, you know, there's no super dark, like when you look at images and the eyes go really dark. This fill light coming in, it's from a Canon 580EX2 speed light, is filling her face, and it's being fired by, I have a Pocket Wizard on my camera, and then my assistant has one on the flash, and so when I fire, it sends a radio signal and fires off that flash. The other option you could have, if you preferred, is if there's enough light, you can use a big old reflector and push that light back into her face, just to keep that really nice, clean, well-lit mask of the face, which is really important. In this series, something else I want to share always is what I see wrong, what I did wrong in an image, because it never fails. Every time I look at one of my images, even one that I'm proud of, I wind up looking at it and going, rats, I should have done XYZ differently. And it's, I mean, every time. I have never had an image where I just go, that is perfect all around. So what I see here that I would have fixed, the number one thing that I would have fixed was had her take a giant step this way so that her head would actually be sitting here instead of here in these leaves. I would have really liked to have had, we have this perfect little frame here, so I would have really liked to have had her head there instead. And I had been moving around, you know, based on trying to make sure that I didn't have too much flare coming into my glass, and so what I should have done was had her scoochy over too, instead of me swinging to the left. The other thing that I would have done was had her put a little bit of bend in that arm. It is very, very straight for me. It looks a little stiff, so I would have asked her to bend that arm just a little bit more had I been more mindful of that. And then the last thing is in her face, you can see her nose, and I'll zoom in a bit so you can really see it. You can see where her nose is crossing her cheek line. So her cheek is going up here, and her nose has crossed that line, which is a giant no-no in the world of portrait photography. So what I would have done was asked her to bring her nose back around towards me just a bit. As soon as I saw that cheek come in over here, then I could have said, and the nose was kind of contained within the frame of her face, that would have been perfect. Or I could have told her, push your nose, you know, turn your nose so that you're giving me a straight profile. That also would have been fine. But this kind of not quite profile, but not quite three-quarter is a pretty big problem. Like if you go into print competition, that type of thing, a lot of times they'll tell you that that's a big mess up. So anyways, if you stumbled on this from, you know, outside sources, this is Emily. I'm with Moms with Cameras, and it's just moms-with-cameras.com. If you have questions, always feel free to use the contact tab at the top of the page when you're on our website. You can use that contact tab and send me a message. Or, of course, you know, send a tweet to @momswithcameras, or you can send us a message on Facebook. It's just Moms with Cameras on Facebook, and so you can leave a message on our page, and I'm always happy to answer questions there. So if you're listening to what I'm talking about and you go, oh, I have something that I want to know, feel free to shoot us a message, and we will definitely get an answer for you. So thank you so much. I hope all of you guys have an amazing day, and I hope that this was helpful. Have a great day. Bye.